Flamethrowers are finally here in World of Tanks console, and today's video is going to look at one of the first premium flamethrowers in the game, which is the Churchill Okie or Okie or whatever you want to call it, OKE, the Churchill. And this is a tier 5 premium, and it has that flamethrower on the very front of this vehicle, and we're going to get into all of the things that this tank has to offer, as well as have a quick look at the other vehicle that is available with a flamethrower right now, which is the TVP VTU, and we can have a look at this as we go. So essentially the TVP VTU has the flamethrower attached as well, and it works in the same way that we have with the Churchill Okie. And essentially both of these vehicles have the functionality of what you would see as a multi-turreted tank. So we've had the multi-turreted tanks in the game for a while now, and essentially it's the same thing, except this one has a flamethrower and it has a limited gun arc, which is one of the key things about these flamethrowers, and why I think that they're not going to be that overpowered, or at least the one that was presented within the Churchill Okie. And we'll do a video on the TVP VTU along with some of the other vehicles that have been released with this new update and the flamethrower update, which is inclusive of the tier 9 Spirit of War vehicle that you can get, as well as the Earn operation, for those of you wondering, that's currently on as well. So it's for the Metal Fest, where you can get yourself the Primo Victoria tier 8 British medium tank, or not the British one, it's in fact a British but Swedish technically vehicle. So yeah, we'll have a look at that as well in the upcoming days, so stay tuned for that. But on to the Churchill Okie to begin with. So essentially what you have is a 2-pounder gun, so it has a rate of fire of 51.42, making this a very high damage per minute vehicle, 2,800 as a heavy tank, and you'll see how quickly you can tear apart opponents in the upcoming games that we have in this vehicle. And then you combine that with the fact that you can get this ATO flamethrower as well, which has the possibility of dealing 14 damage every couple of seconds, well, not a couple of seconds, every minuscule amount of time, and it can essentially burn opponents, but you do have to pen, and with 100 pen you can pen tier 5s quite easily. It's just when you come up against those higher tier vehicles that the flamethrower becomes a little bit less useful, and it's probably because of that you aren't going to use the flamethrower that much, and it's going to become a situational thing, where if you rock up behind someone using that insane mobility that doesn't exist on the Churchill Okie, because of the fact that you've got 29 kilometers an hour when using both the speed boost equipment. So yeah, pretty slow, 25 kilometers an hour base, which is of course boosted by these equipment bits that we've got added into the tank. So overall, tank's actually pretty good, and that's because of the DPM. Yeah, but we'll get into the other statistics of the vehicle real quick. You have a nice 10 degrees of gun depression, which is fantastic. The armor model of this tank is pretty decent. You're able to bounce quite a few rounds if you side scrape, which is what these British tanks like this, including the Black Prince and the Churchill 7, the Churchill 1, etc., that you have in the British tech tree line for the heavy tanks, because of the side skirts and stuff like that, and essentially just trying to keep your upper plate and lower plate and basically the front of the turret away from your opponents, peeking out like this, and we'll see a bit of that on the next map that we're going to look at. But either way, let's jump into some gameplay. I think we've seen enough of what the statistics tank. It's a fast firing Churchill with some pretty interesting flamethrower mechanics chucked in. So you guys know what it is. You guys know that it's a slow one and that it's probably not the most mobile. So let's jump in and have a look at what the gameplay's like. So our first gameplay is on Pearl River, and this is the best of the two gameplays that I'm going to showcase to you. It's not going to take too long to actually get into this match. It's a pretty quick one, and yeah, we can rack up quite a lot of damage using the damage per minute and of course the flamethrower during this replay as well. Now, I do apologise to the OI as well as him apologising to me since we both crashed into each other, blah blah blah. Either way, we're going to push towards the middle of the map since I just couldn't be bothered to go all the way around, and by the time I get there it's probably just going to be a crushed flank anyway. So we're going to go into the centre. Hopefully we can find the medium tanks which we can pen with the flamethrower on this vehicle, and if we can do that then the game is going to be very, very nice indeed. Now, I'm interested to see what you guys think of the flamethrowers. They do look cool in the game. They're super, super fun to see, but I just think that they're not that overpowered, at least on the Churchill Okie or Okie. I should probably just caveat it and say, I'm going to say okay for the beginning and the rest of this video. So the Okie is, as I say, okay, the flamethrower, not particularly too great, but there is uses for it, and I think against light tanks, against medium tanks, and against lightly armoured medium tanks, this is going to be devastating with how quick this fire rate is on the flamethrower, as well as the fact that you can then swap to your normal gun when you're out of that flamethrower. The real problem becomes, is it actually worth firing the flamethrower in the first place, or is it actually just better to just fire the main gun if you can pen reliably? And that's what I ran into when I came up against the T1 Heavy. Now you see me here, I missed the first few, and you can see here I swapped back to the standard gun. I'm not entirely sure whether or not it was worth it against the T1 Heavy. You can see that it does tick for quite a bit of damage, but when you're reloading in like a second and dealing 56 damage, are you going to be able to proc 4 flamethrower hits for every one shot that you can fire? And the answer is probably not. So it's going to be one of those things where I think if you are thinking about using this tank and you maybe get ammo racked, the flamethrower will be useful since you can just burst that out all in one go, and then you're going to have the problem with just deciding whether or not to even use the flamethrower, because this gun is so fast firing. You can see just how good it is as well. Shell velocity pretty decent on the standard rounds, which is nice to see, and you're able to do quite a bit of damage consistently with this tank, which is surprising. And the good thing as well is that this tank isn't particularly that expensive. You're only having to pay 2,700 gold for the pleasure of playing this tank, which, considering that it's a brand new vehicle, even though it is tier 5, it's not awful. Is there better tier 5s? Yes, 100%. But will you have fun playing it? Will it be an interesting tank for you to try out? And if you have some free gold left over from one of the seasons or whatever it might be, then maybe it's worth it for you to test out this new tank and give it a go for yourself, and let me know what you actually think of this vehicle. Or potentially go ahead and get the free version, which is the TVP VTU, which you can play in the tech tree without having to spam out a load of gold. So that's kind of where you can go with this vehicle, and my kind of ideas as to what this tank is good at and what sort of things you need to be keeping an eye out for. Key thing is just make sure that when you are playing this tank, you're just pushing forward towards your opponents. If you stop and stay too stagnant within the game, you're going to find yourself not dealing a ton of damage, and it's all about using that high DPM when you get into a position to deal that huge amount of damage, and it really is good at being able to do that. Now, you're seeing here, we push up, we find ourselves a little KV-1, easy snack, and this is where that gun and the DPM of that gun is insanely good, like genuinely insane. Now, we get penned by the AC4, who actually appears to have a brain because he blind fired me, or at least appeared to have a brain, but you know, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Either way, we are trying to deal the damage to this light tank. Maybe we can find him. It looks like he's going to try and come around for this other light tank, and in fact he does indeed do that. And this is where having good accuracy and actually aiming 100% is really, really good, because you know, you can deal with that damage super quickly, and this tank can pick up a lot of it in a short period of time, coming away with the epic victory here and picking up 1,561 experience and 2,031 damage with 5 enemies taken out, which was a decent game. Nothing outrageous, and I can guarantee you there are going to be games where you can deal 4,000, probably at the upper end, and for the most part 2,000 damage in this tank. It's probably realistic to be able to do fairly often if you can get yourself in a nice matchup where you aren't playing up against some super high tier vehicles like tier 7. But let's jump into the next one where we see the flaws of the Churchill one or the Churchill Okie as well. Now this next map is Ruinberg, which is of course very good for playing heavy tanks and brawling tanks, and it's nice to actually see this map back in the game since we've been away from a lot of the heavy tank maps that World of Tanks console had to offer back in the day, things like Ruinberg, things like Ensk, and you know, we don't see that many purely heavy dominant maps, which is nice to see them starting to come back and to have all of these other maps coming back into the game. And it's always nice to get a few more variety of different maps, and that's always nice. But in this game we're going to make a bit of a push. Not entirely sure if this is the best way to go, as we haven't played since they updated it. It's not typically how you expect this map to play, because they've changed quite a bit in terms of the central area and the eastern area of the map. I don't know why they changed it, to be honest with you, but either way, we make a bit of a push up to this corner where we find a Churchill 1. Now this is the tech tree equivalent of this vehicle, and you can see we're side scraping off of the corner. He is of course aiming entirely out in the open, and we're going for the weak point of the Churchill 1, which is the mantler of the vehicle. You can see it's quite easy to pen, you just have to actually hit it, and unfortunately because of the reload speed of this tank, it's surprisingly difficult to hit because you're not fully aiming every single time you reload, which we could do, but it's probably me just being lazy at this point. And you can see here the enemy Churchill's struggling to actually pen us. I decide that, you know, after a while of just peppering him through the turret, maybe we could try going into that lower plate by loading some premium rounds. And you can see me here loading those premium rounds, and there you go, easy as you like. He is going to be out of this game pretty quickly, and here we go, an OI, not the favourite tank of the Churchill lines, because it can deal a ton of damage, it has heat rounds, you have quite flat armour when you're playing these sorts of vehicles, and you can see there we got penned by the OI there, which isn't ideal, and there we go. We deal with the VK very, very quickly. But yeah, the problem comes in the OI. I was testing out the flamethrower, apparently on the wall of a building, which is, you know, very, very good. And you can see here, just trying to get that flamethrower to work again to test it out. But OI is just, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There's not a lot we could do against him. Even our premium rounds aren't that strong when it comes to fighting an OI. So yeah, it was almost a battle that we were destined to lose. But there you go. I guess I pushed in a little bit too far. Maybe we should have gone around the other way. But you live and you learn. And that is the final game in the Churchill Okie. But you can see there, once people can pen you, yeah, this tank becomes awful, because they can just derp straight through the front of you as soon as they know the weak points, the flat plates, and it becomes annoying to face. And in tier 7 games, it's very, very difficult for you to be able to deal a ton of damage, even with the high DPM, because everyone will pen you, and a lot of the time you pull around, you're not able to fire off all of your shells, you're bouncing rounds, and it becomes very expensive to play this tank as well in those tier 7 games, because you're having to fire almost exclusive premium. So overall, the tank as a interesting, fun vehicle that's something a little bit different, it's very good. As a competitive tank within World of Tanks as a tier 5, it's probably in the mediocre category, where it's very good in certain situations, but for the most part, it's not that great. And the flamethrower, although it might be fun, is not that useful in generic wise when it comes to the Churchill Okie. So that is kind of my opinion. The flamethrower on this, not that great. Maybe it's different on the TVP VTU, and if you've tried it out, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the TVP VTU, and we'll try and combine that in the video where we look at the TVP and your guys' opinions as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video of the brand new flamethrowing tank, the Churchill Okie, and of course let me know in the comment section down below anything you want to see in the upcoming videos, and I will catch you there. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.